For more on the humanitarian crisis in Sudan, public affairs analyst David Bole joins me on What Now. Good to have you join us, Dave. All right, I understand we do not have Dave at the moment. When we do, we will have that conversation with him, but we will turn to a different conversation this time, also in Africa, particularly in Nigeria. Now, mixed reactions are still trailing the threat by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to carry out a military intervention in Nigeria. This comes after he designated Nigeria as a country of particular concerns, arguing that Christians in the country are facing an existential threat. The U.S. president also threatened to send U.S. forces into Nigeria with guns ablazing. But Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu maintains that the characterization does not reflect the nation's reality, emphasizing that religious freedom and tolerance have been a core tenet of the country's collective identity. Meanwhile, the Chinese government has pledged its firm support to President Bola Tinubu's administration amid threats of military action by U.S. President Donald Trump. Addressing a press conference in Beijing, the spokesperson of China's Foreign Ministry, Mao Ning, said China firmly opposes any country using religion and human rights as an excuse to interfere in other countries' internal affairs and threatening other countries with sanctions and force. She said, as Nigeria's comprehensive strategic partner, China firmly supports the Nigerian government in leading its people on the development path as suited to its national conditions. Now, the Christian Association of Nigeria and the 19 northern states and Abuja has called on Christians and Muslims to use President Donald Trump's recent statement on the alleged killing of Christians in the country as a call for unity and collective action. A chairman of the association, John Hayab, appealed to citizens not to view President Trump's comments as divisive, but see them as an opportunity to work together to end killings and religious intolerance across the country. The CAN chairman added that the statement should serve as a wake-up call for both faith communities to demand concrete steps from the government to ensure that safety and freedom of all citizens, irrespective of religion or identity. Right, for a look into the legal implications and just general implications of President Trump's threat to Nigeria, international law expert Livingston Weche joins me virtually. He joins me here in Lagos. Good to have you join us, Livingston.
Thank you, Precious.
So let's just talk about your own assessment and reading of this situation. You are an international law expert. Just give us, your idea and what you think is happening, what you make of that threat, rather.
Well, the word threat has been used in different contexts, but the reality is that the Nigerian situation has become very worrisome because Nigeria is of great concern, not in the context of the U.S., but it's a country of great interest to the whole world because virtually every super nation has its tentacle pitched here economically and other areas on Nigeria. But looking at what Trump, the president of the United States, has said, I think I borrow from what some of the opinions have also tried to convey, that it's a message for Nigeria to sit up. Because you can call these incidents mass killings, you can call them genocide, you can call them Holocaust, you can call it pogrom, whatever name it is called. That is not even what bothers the victims. What bothers the victims at this time is that they need to be rescued from these killers. There are killers, whether they are terrorists, you call them bandits, or you call them headsmen, whatever name you want to call them. There is a situation that that comes in the likelihood of a doctrine of necessity for intervention, because under international customary law, all citizens of states have become global citizens, which every nation owes a duty. If you're in the United States, you owe a duty for the U.S. to protect you. And that's why member nations of the UN signed up to a charter under the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights for the protection of human persons. So where it appears that a state is failing to protect its citizen, extraordinary measures may be employed. In this case, I'm not here to say whether what Trump is doing is justified or not. But if you ask the victim in the villages in Plateau and in the Middle Belt, they will say if it will take Trump to intervene at this time to save them from these mass killings, so be it. So it's a question that calls for a quick action by the president. I like the proviso that was stated by President Trump. He said, provided the Nigerian government takes steps, convincing steps, to show that they have contained this situation, failing which they may have no option than to intervene militarily at this time. So the question will now be, what steps is the president and the commander-in-chief at this time willing to take to save Nigerians? Because remember, the primary purpose of government is the protection of life and property. And where that fails, government needs to wake up from its slumber. This is not a question of whether you support the administration or not. Because if there are no lives to support the administration, then upon whom will the administration be hinging its support? So you need these people to be alive for your administration to gain credibility, legitimacy, and get the needed support that you need to function as a government. So in that context, I wish to state that the window available for the Nigerian government is to collaborate with the United States. Remember,
and Livingstone, just before we get to the issue of collaboration, I wanted to sort of stay on what you said. You were talking about those who have been affected by these challenges. They don't care who saves them at the moment. But for a lot of people, it's like being, between the rock and a hard place, and you're wondering, yes, lives need to be saved, and they're calling on the federal government to do more. But they're also wondering, should we then, also sacrifice our sovereignty? So it's a matter of saving lives and national interest, and wondering which comes first.
Let me tell you, the sovereignty conundrum is a fundamental question within the international plane. And the reason why you have foreign encroachments and interferences or trespass into nations' sovereignties is the fact that nations have by themselves weakened their sovereignty. Sovereignty is not an act of proclamation. It is an act of deeds. When you do things that weaken your sovereignty over dependence on foreign intervention for economic survival, weak political and democratic principles and values, little or no democratic institutions in place, weakened judicial systems and injustice at play. At that point, you have weakened your sovereignty. So you cannot now lay claim to the defense of sovereignty when by yourselves and by your act, you have weakened sovereignty and allowed foreign superpowers to intervene to save lives for whatever interest, because you may not rule out the interest aspect of these issues. Now, it was here a couple of years ago, I think under the President Muhammadu Buhari administration, where a ranking officer of the government came to say that more than 2 billion or a certain figure that was allotted for acquisition of arms for the fight against insurgency was nowhere to be found. It was the spokesman of the president that came to counter that very ranking member of the government to shut down and said he was misconstrued and misinterpreted in his representations. Those are things that the international community look at to assess you, whether indeed you take seriously the sacredness of your sovereignty. You don't have respect for your own sovereignty. You have used your sovereignty as a bargaining chip, going cap in hand to seek for foreign aid, and when they come, you apply them in areas that are not even meeting up with the needs of citizens, but for frivolous usages. And so when they analyze you in terms of your governance protocols, in application of the duties and obligations of government to citizens, and they find out that you're failing, look at our global governance index. Where does Nigeria stand today? We say this because it has been a successive menace within various administrations in the past. It's not about the President Bola Tinubu experience. You may have heard some of the narratives on the media that the APC as a party has constituted at some point went to report Nigeria to the White House. There were killings going on in Nigeria, and that today it is playing out the other way, and Nigerians are the ones, or the same government that went at the time when it was not yet in government, is now crying to say, no, there are no killings. So this back and forth cannot help us, because the international community, as you call them, or super states, as you call them, have their intelligence on our country. And the implication going forward may be that intelligence sharing may be limited. There may become some measure of international scrutiny on Nigeria. It may sway investors from coming in, because mere hearing that there is a likelihood of America invading terrorists, I am finding it difficult to say invading Nigeria, because I didn't hear Trump say he will invade Nigeria, but terrorists. After all, we have also sought for international global support in the fight against terrorism. So where that continues to play out, our rating go to the roots of whether indeed we have respect or any form of regard for our sovereignty as a state.
Livingstone, a lot of people, you also mentioned some international law here at some point in this conversation, but a lot of people are saying, look, under international law, this is not the process, these are not the procedures, this is what should be done or not. We know that President Trump doesn't have regards for international laws and never has, and probably never will. And I'm wondering how we should engage now in a way that yield positive response.
Well, you know, if you raise that argument, I prefer to speak from the position of victims. Victims are not interested in that opinion. If the victim's mindset is that if this is the only display for the respect of international law that Trump will apply in the current prevailing situation, then so be it. Because it's a challenge that for the second time counting under a Trump administration, Nigeria is being redesignated, particularly when facts are walking on the street. You cannot blindfold facts, because they will always have visibility rights. They will always have ingress and egress in every situation. It may take some time. And I want to say that I am not a proponent for foreign invasion of the Nigerian state under any circumstance. But what I'm propagating at this point is not the legality or otherwise. After all, necessity knows no law. It's a legal principle. At this time, lives are going. People are trying to attribute it to whether they are Christians or I don't care whether they are. I don't care what religion or faith base you may attribute these victims to. But the fact that our countrymen and our compatriots are being killed like they don't matter, like that. Look at what happened in Adamawa a couple of years ago, where Sunday Johnson, in self-defense, tried to defend himself over a multiple stab injury from a certain header, and eventually went to court, and the Supreme Court upheld that his self-defense was not justified in trying to defend himself against his aggressors. He was convicted and sentenced to death. So these are issues. I call on the president to kindly take steps. He should even visit Plateau State, visit the victim and make proclamations and issue marching orders and give timelines and mandates to these military officers and expose and bring to record all those who are sponsors that have made this situation an industry. The world will not take us serious.
Thank you so much, Livingstone. Always a pleasure to have you on the program. Livingstone Uwechi, international law expert. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.